So, if you follow GreenHome Institute and our education, you've heard me say it, but I'll say it again. Aim for passive house. People ask how energy efficient a building should be, and I always say the same thing. I've always said it, that we need to aim for the passive house energy targets, such as our building envelope, our air leakage, passive solar, and mechanical systems as the primary goal. And now we can do this with our existing housing and our building stock, existing buildings. Imagine transforming millions of existing homes and buildings to achieve these goals. We can reduce our energy costs, carbon emissions, create safety and resistance to climate change, and help stabilize the power grid as we electrify. So that's why I'm so thrilled to be having this conversation now. But before we get into it, I do want to say thanks to our top tier sponsor, Rheem. Rheem has the ProTerra, which offers 240-volt hybrid heat pump water heaters, which work by taking heat out of the air and heating water to 400% efficiency, ensuring constant flow of hot water. They also have their 120-volt system, which is an easy plug and play into the standard outlet, which can quickly replace a traditional gas-fired unit without the need for expensive electrical upgrades. I've now been using this Rheem heat pump for now 5 years with constant hot water and lower carbon usage. Leak detection, smart control, time of use app, and more. If you're not yet ready to get a heat pump or it doesn't work out for your space, they have traditional water heating systems with time of use settings to help keep costs and carbon low. You can learn more at greenhomeinstitute.org/REAMHPWH. All right, well, welcome everyone to Intro to Passive House Certification for Existing Buildings. This course is brought to you by the GreenHome Institute. The GreenHome Institute has a mission to empower people to make healthier and more sustainable choices in the renovation and construction of the places we live. Today, I will be your moderator. My name is Brett Little, and I am the education manager here. This course is approved for multiple continuing education units, including 3 pillars in our certified Green Home pillar designation. AIA Health, Welfare, and Safety may make it applicable to your state-based design or contractor license. And the Passive House 5-digit code will be sent to you within your certificate as long as you're here for the entire CEU approved hour. So with that, I am excited to hand it off to our speaker here today, Haley Harlow with Passive House Institute US, to be talking to you more about this topic. So Haley, welcome, and please take it away.
Thank you, Brett and GreenHome Institute for having me. Let me just share my screen here and I will get started. Okay, so yeah, this will be an overview of the Phius 2024 Revive program. Um, so I'll start out by going over what Phius does and the different certification programs that we offer, the outcome goals of the Phius 2024 Revive program. I'll go over the differences between the old Revive program and the new one. I'll address the differences between the standard document for Revive and the Phius certification program, roles and responsibilities of the standard, the processes involved with the standard, the requirements, and then we'll look at some single and multifamily examples. So if you're not familiar with Phius, we certify passive buildings. I'm a building certification manager, so I deal with a lot of the design certification reviews and feasibility studies that come through. We also train and certify professionals, architects, consultants, builders, quality assurance professionals. We also have a new foundations training available for the Phius curious. So if someone you're working with is just looking for a high level, what is Phius and passive building about, the foundations training is a great place to start. We also set the standard for passive building through ongoing research and development and policy initiatives, and certify building products like windows, doors, and prefabricated panels. So we have several different certification programs. We have new construction programs and retrofit programs. On the new construction side, there are the performance and prescriptive paths. And on the retrofit side, there is a prescriptive path that is unfortunately impossible. So we have two performance paths um, that we typically use. But the old Phius Core Revive 2021 program was essentially the new construction program with some allowances for existing or difficult to mitigate thermal bridges. Whereas the new Phius Core Revive 2024 program has an entirely different set of performance metrics. So, the vision when it comes to all Phius standards is that every building should support the health of people and the planet. So to accomplish this, the Phius Revive 2024 program focuses on health and safety, resilience, and decarbonization, with secondary outcomes of comfort, long-term affordability, and durability. So yeah, these are how the old Revive program and new Revive program stack up against each other. So if you're familiar with the Phius new construction program, you're probably familiar with the space conditioning targets associated with our passive projects. So those are the heating and cooling targets. Um, and again, the Revive program had allowances on these targets for existing structural thermal bridges that can't be mitigated. Um, there's also a source energy target for the Revive 2021 program. Um, it calls for balanced ventilation, moisture management, and durability, and follows the EPA and DOE QA process. So the new program, we're adding the assessment of existing conditions, which is crucial for retrofit projects and any building that you're working on that's existing. Um, and then taking the place of those heating and cooling targets are the thermal resilience requirements, which I'll get into later, but these are at a high level, thermal resilience and operational resilience. There are requirements for both. And then we have this ADORB life cycle cost, which is a full cost accounting life cycle metric that I'll get into detail later. We're still calling for indoor air quality action items, moisture management, same as the new construction program. And we're also adding site hazard fortification requirements. The new Revive program follows the ASHRAE commissioning process. And for both the new and the old standard, monitoring and ongoing commissioning is recommended, but not necessarily required at this time. So there are two different documents that I want to differentiate here. There's the Phius Revive 2024 standard document, and then there's the Phius 2024 certification program. So the standard document is written in code mandatory language to set the stage for jurisdictions to adopt and administer independently in the future. It spells out the detailed requirements and calculation protocols for the performance requirements, and again, relies on the commissioning process from ASHRAE Guidelines 0.2 and Standards 230 and 202. So on the other hand, we have the Phius certification program. So for the Phius certification program, Phius is acting as the authority having jurisdiction to administer the standard to whaling project teams. It also simplifies the revive process by focusing on the acceptance gates that require verification by the AHJ according to the standard document. So when I say acceptance gates, this is check-ins with the certification body, but also there are acceptance gates throughout the standard for check-ins with the owner and other project team members. So the FIA certification program boils it down to what do you need to show the certification body in order to comply with the standard. So these are the different roles of the Revive certification program. Again, the standard document as it's written in code mandatory language. We couldn't use CPHC or Phius raters and verifiers. Um, So the language in the standard document, the AHJ, is whatever authority having jurisdiction body that adopts the standard for the Phius certification program, that is Phius. The commissioning provider is equivalent to the CPHC, the Phius certified consultant, and the V&T providers are the same as the Phius raters and verifiers. So yeah, again, the standard focuses heavily on process, having regular acceptance gates that require approval from the owner, AHJ, or both. And this is really to ensure quality and quality assurance, openness, and synergy among the project team members and stakeholders. So the expectations of the CXP and the CPHC, again, are the same. For the certification process, both are expected to compile all of the certification documents, facilitate and consult on design decisions, complete all of the energy modeling, and act as the liaison between Phius or the AHJ and the project team. V&T providers / rater and verifier expectations. Again, these are the same. Both are expected to complete the required field testing and verification activities, compile documentation demonstrating as-built compliance with the standard requirements. So this is a very linear version of the revive process, and we're not really reinventing the wheel here. I mean, this is a process that any existing building goes through when it has work done in some degree. So at the very beginning, we're determining whether the project should be retrofitted at all. What are the alternate options? Sometimes a building is just too far gone. Should we raise and rewild the site? Should we start from scratch or should we retrofit? Um, and then the next step after deciding to retrofit is to assess and document all of the existing conditions, complete the assessment and investigation workbook, which I'll go into detail in a little bit, and complete all of the baseline existing building simulation work. So establishing the current performance in terms of the thermal and operational resilience and the life cycle cost. Um, and yeah, establishing a baseline to beat for the retrofit. The next phase is the design and phase planning. So this includes iterative building simulations and the determination of the final retrofit approach. Design documentation is completed, drawings, basis of design documents, submittals, etc. You're also establishing an implementation plan here. So deciding whether or not the retrofit is going to occur over one single phase or whether it will be drawn out over multiple phases. For implementation and verification, this is when all of the design decisions get implemented. And then at the very end, verifying and compiling all of the documentation of the implemented measures at every phase. Once all of the phases are complete, the project moves on to testing and ongoing commissioning. So the final required testing, like your blower door test and water tests, uh, should all have been implemented, and the project goes through the final testing. After all the final testing, there are monitoring electives available. So this is something that should be established sort of in the design phase, determining what you're going to monitor and how you're going to monitor. And so this is the process for Phius certification. Again, starting with phase 0, this is your rationale for retrofit, determining whether the building should be retrofit, and then registering for certification, moving into assessment and investigation, design, and then implementation. So you'll see the darker colored milestones, milestone 1, 2, 3, and 4 are all of the acceptance gates with the AHJ. So once the project is registered, the project can move on to working through their site assessments and investigations. Phius will approve that, and the project will move into design. When Phius approves the design, the project moves into implementation. We do a final review once all the phases are complete, and then we issue a final certification. Monitoring may become required in future versions of the standard, but for now it's optional, highly encouraged, of course, for all residential projects. Non-residential projects, we have a requirement currently written to monitor with Energy Star portfolio manager. Um, Unfortunately, due to the state of things, this may not be a requirement anymore, so we'll have to figure out a way to pivot. But as it stands, that is the requirement. So at the very beginning of all of this, during the assessment and investigation phase, Phius is working on developing workbooks to bring projects through these phases. So this documentation matrix can be found in the Phius 2024 certification guidebook, along with the other guidebook screenshots. And the box you see in red are the items that are included in this assessment and investigation workbook. And this is an Excel-based workbook, and I'll go through it a little bit in depth later. But basically, all sections of the workbook should be complete before reviewing or before submitting to Phius for review. And these reports down at the bottom in blue are generated in the background as the CPHC completes the workbook. So all of these documentation pieces are called for specifically by the standard document. We're just putting them again into this more simplified format, and building these compliance workbooks to verify all of the assessment and investigation related activities. So in the next phase, design and phase planning, the design workbook is still in development. We actually have our first project going through this phase currently. So one of my main roles of the Revive 2024 program has been these workbooks. So I'm currently working on shaping all of them up for use in real projects. But so far, its function is similar to the prescriptive checklist. So there are built-in functions to verify compliance with certification requirements like Phius's prescriptive hydrothermal rules, and the window comfort and condensation risk assessments, etc. So yeah, these are all the deliverables that will be captured in that workbook. And at this phase, the team again should also decide whether the implementation will occur in a single phase or over multiple phases. And at this phase, project drawings, submittals, data sheets, etc., will be submitted for review during this phase, to confirm all of the design deliverables. At implementation, verification, and testing, again, this will be all part of a workbook in the end, but it will be similar to the existing QA/QC field checklist for the Phius new construction program. So similar to new construction, project photos, testing reports, etc., will be submitted during this phase. And this occurs after all retrofit phases are completed. So even if the phase plan calls for phasing over 5 years or so, all of this documentation gets submitted to Phius at the end of all of the phases once they've all been implemented. So in terms of co-requisite programs, there aren't necessarily any co-requisite programs. This is in quotes because we ask that projects follow the EPA Energy Savings Plus Health guideline. So there's a different version of this document for single-family duplexes and townhomes, and another multifamily specific one that we're also requiring non-residential projects to work through as well. but there's no certification tied to it. So I'll go into a little bit what this document includes, but there's not a certificate, so it's not necessarily a program, just a document that we're requiring teams to follow. And then Energy Star Portfolio Manager, as I said, recommended, not required, and potentially not going to be a thing in the future. So there are two tiers to the Revive standard. For Phius certification, these are referred to as the core and the zero tiers. In the standard document, they are referred to as Tier B and Tier A. So Tier A is fully decarbonized, no fossil fuel or combustion equipment allowed at all. But for the core tier, we have an exception to this rule where on-site stored combustion fuel is permitted for emergency backup electricity generation and or outdoor cooking. So this will come up later when we talk through the thermal and operational resilience requirements. But yeah, as it stands, only some gas allowed in the core tier, but for the zero tier, no combustion equipment at all. So these are the high level requirements, and this little matrix points to the different sections of the Phius 2024 certification guidebook, so you can read more about what these requirements are all about in there. But at a high level, on hazard mitigation, we're looking at earthquake, flood, tsunami, hail and ice dams, structural high wind, and wildfire. Um, in terms of the passive conservation requirements, so this would be like the space conditioning targets of the new construction program, the seasonal resilience, air tightness, we're aligning with the minimum requirement is to meet IECC 2021 air tightness, and that's 0.28 CFM50 per square foot of envelope. But project teams are welcome to go above and beyond that, of course. And then in terms of moisture risk mitigation and comfort, we're calling for the exact same rules as the new construction program. So this is your window comfort and condensation risk assessment tool and the hydrothermal prescriptive moisture guidelines in Appendix B of the guidebook. And then for active conservation, we're looking at this adorb cost. So we have requirements on the total life cycle cost of the project when compared to the baseline. So this is the assessment and investigation compliance workbook. So again, this is an Excel-based tool, and the idea is that you start with the program plan tab and complete the tabs in order, left to right, top to bottom. I go into depth about this workbook in our Revive 2024 launch webinar, which is available on the Phius website. I've also linked the assessment and investigation workbook in these slides, which I imagine will be shared later. But automations are built into this workbook to avoid conflicting inputs or redundant entries, and is used to establish basically all of the certification requirements to be considered going into the design phase. So the first tab in this workbook after the program planning tab is the rationale for retrofit. So this preliminary assessment calculates a climate migration risk score for any U.S. county and is based on predicted future risk level in the categories of heat and wet bulb risk, farm crop risk, sea level rise, wildfire risk, and economic risk. And so Phius is not requiring a specific score to be met, but this tool is really meant to be a helpful exercise for the project team to evaluate possible climate migration risks that may make retrofitting just not worth it. So when retrofitting may not be worth it, other options should be considered. So the screenshot on the right is taken from ProPublica, and this is a map showing predicted economic damages between 2040 and 2060 if we're producing high emissions. Um, so, maybe on the southeast coast of the US, probably might not want to retrofit there. But those are the kind of considerations that we're hoping people look at. So this is what it looks like in the assessment investigation workbook. So you can see it's based on the project county at the top of the climate migration section, and there are different scores for each of these risk categories. At the very bottom, there's a combined risk, and so all of the counties in the US end up with a score. And then the final consideration, kind of bottom line, uh, consider your options statement is generated. So in the purple box, a final statement will appear based on other inputs in the workbook, like the climate migration risk score, the maintenance needs, and intended building life. So in this example, the final consideration is this building may be an ideal candidate for retrofit. Please confirm acceptance. Type an X in the box to the right. If the project was not recommended to be retrofit, a different statement would come up. Again, this is not going to cause Phius to turn you away from certification, but if the bottom line is consider other options, best to consider other options and proceed with caution. So the next tab in this workbook focuses on more site and climate hazard risk mitigation. So there are specific FEMA or IBHS fortifications that are required for projects within certain hazard zones or whose existing conditions are currently deficient in these categories. So for example, in the workbook, you select from these drop-down menus all of the resources needed for determining the different hazard zones are linked in the workbook, so you can quickly find those and define your hazard category or location. So in the two examples down below, on the left, if a project is in seismic design category A, according to the IRC, there is no certification requirement. But on the right, a project in seismic design category D within the scope of FEMA P50, which is a single family detached wood frame building. Um, and then you complete this additional simplified seismic assessment um, document. And so when you go through that assessment form, say your building scores a D plus, so the certification requirement is to design to improve to grade B minus or higher. So yeah, this workbook for the other categories as well will just kind of calculate a certification requirement based on the user inputs and hazard zone that the project falls within. So the next tab in this workbook is the CFR tab. So these are all of your current facility requirements. These are entirely electives. So these are any owner-elected facility requirements that are meant to be. Phius won't be reviewing these, but these are mostly for the project team to keep track of the owner's personal design deliverables. Um, so in this example here, one of the owner's requirements is functional, and they want to implement age in place um, uh, work, and so they're going to fix the existing bathrooms that are not that don't currently accommodate mobility devices or grab bars. And then another functional requirement for them is comfort and resilience, which is kind of inherent to the standard, but in this case, they are taking that as modernizing the house layout, improving circulation throughout the house. Again, these aren't things that Phius are going to check, but something that the owner can say, hey, this is really important to me. Can we make sure we keep track of this and make sure that it gets done? So the next requirement category is health. So this coming back to the EPA Energy Savings Plus Health Guideline. This is a comprehensive list of all of the priority issues that are covered in this document. So everything from asbestos to environmental tobacco smoke to pests, radon, what have you. This captures all of the indoor air quality related concerns that we have with existing buildings. So to kind of go through the structure of this document, there are three kind of main pieces to every priority issue. So there are assessment protocols. So these are the required protocols to evaluate the existing conditions on site. So all of these assessment protocols are what are required during the assessment and investigation phase. For all of these priority issues, there are minimum actions associated with them. So if you complete the assessment and find that the building is deficient in certain areas, take the minimum actions. So these are the certification requirements as applicable. Some buildings might not have any issues with some of the priority issues, and therefore no minimum actions are associated with them. There are also expanded actions. So these are just ways to go above and beyond for indoor air quality. They are not required for certification. And then to give a little example of what some of these assessments and minimum actions can be, one super basic one is the environmental tobacco smoke. So the assessment protocol calls for looking signs of smoking indoors, so looking for ashtrays, cigarette packs, and odors. And then the minimum action is just owner education, and encouraging occupants not to smoke in the home, and educating the client on the risks associated with that. So this is how it looks in the assessment and investigation workbook. Now there are two tabs in the workbook that look basically identical, but one is called assessment and one is called investigation. So we've split these up because we split it up into two different kind of site visits. So the assessment phase is a very early site visit, probably one of the first ones, where you're just walking through the project, looking for high level assessment items. So the first step is looking at what can we achieve during a walkthrough. And then anything that needs to be more invasive or like actual testing can be completed during investigation. So a site visit later on when all of the walkthrough items are kind of completed. So in this example here, one of the categories being radon. During a walkthrough, maybe we determine whether the building has an active radon mitigation system or a passive one or no system at all. But when it comes to radon testing, pre and post upgrades, obviously this is maybe a little bit more invasive, includes a little bit more coordination. So we'll defer that to investigation to be done at a later time. Um, so yeah, left column here are your planning notes. So the notes that you complete before you go to the site, you're planning your entire walkthrough. And then on the right, you've already finished the walkthrough. Now you're taking notes and looking at, do we need to investigate this further? Was this deferred to investigation in the first place? Do we absolutely know it's going to require remediation, etc.? So we're kind of using this workbook to filter out what needs to be addressed in terms of the EPA Energy Savings Plus Health Guideline. So the next category of requirements is resilience. So there are two pieces to the resilience requirements. There's thermal and operational. So for thermal resilience, we're looking at the project's ability to maintain safe indoor conditions during a power outage. So this is an outage 1 week during the winter and 1 week during the summer. And so this outage period is based on the most extreme weather week for the project location based on 30 years of historical weather data. And then we morph it in order to look at a future case where the weather does become more stressful. Um, and then we have the operational resilience piece. So during the outage periods, critical loads need to be covered. So we require balanced ventilation. So the ventilator needs to run at 5 CFM per person during the outage. We also need 33 watts. We require 33 watts at least per unit for miscellaneous electric loads, the refrigerator and any other critical loads that the owner determines are necessary. And so this is where the core and zero thing come into play. So any fuel source can be used for the core tier, including a natural gas generator. But for the zero tier, this has to be done completely renewably. So PV and battery. And then the decarbonization requirement is called the adorb cost. So this is annualized decarbonization of retrofitted buildings cost, and it is the sum of the direct energy cost of the project, the building retrofit measures, the cost of carbon upfront and embodied, the operating cost of carbon, and the energy system transition cost. And then we're also giving teams credit for additional decarbonization effort. Um, so material swap outs, business practice changes, etc., can help lower your adorb cost. But the criteria is basically that the post-retrofit building must not have an adorb cost greater than the baseline. So again, we're looking at an analysis duration of 70 years for Phius certification. And so the baseline case is going to have a certain adorb cost over that 70-year period. The post-retrofit case must be less than the baseline case in order to comply with the standard. So, how do we determine whether the project meets the resilience and adored cost metrics? Well, we've developed in-house the Revive Calc modeling tool. So, this is a new free open source modeling tool. It can be found and downloaded on our Phius Revive GitHub page. It runs on Energy Plus basically and is used to automate resilience and annual simulation and life cycle cost analysis. And it's completely based on the calculation protocols outlined in the revised standard document itself. And it also supports parametric iterations, so you can run 2 cases or you can run 100 cases. It's a pretty cool tool to use so far. We do have a handbook on how to use the tool. So it comes with step-by-step instructions on how to use the tool. There are also training videos that are linked at the beginning of each section, and there will be updates coming soon. It's a very new tool. There are some bugs, but we are looking for testers and people to use it and try it and give us feedback. So just these are some definitions and terms that I'll probably be using as I walk through some of the single family and multifamily examples. Um, so you can come back to this and refer to it at your leisure. So yeah, thermal resilience. This is what we're looking at for the winter case. These are the hard requirements of the winter thermal resilience outage. So we're looking at in order to comply with the standard, the project has to have 0 hours below 35 degrees and less than 216 set hours, which is the standard effective temperature, which is 54 degrees Fahrenheit. And those hours are during the outage period. So when your power's out and you don't have any heat, can the building stay above these thresholds? And then again, for operational resilience, the critical loads are the 5 CFM per person and 33 watts for mills. Um, and just a note on the winter thermal resilience criteria, active heating is not permitted during the winter outage period, which will become important when I talk about the cooling outage period. So as I'm going through these hard resilience requirements, I'll also be showing you some example projects. These are feasibility studies that Phius has completed just within the last 6 months. We've got a single family project. It's a historic retrofit in Washington, D.C., and a single family kind of ranch style home in Eugene, Oregon. So these are the outputs of the Revive Calc tool. Um, these are actually taken from one of the reports that we put together for the feasibility studies. So the outputs from the tool don't exactly look like this, but they are in metric units. So I thought it would be helpful to show this in IP because that's what most of us are probably used to. So the graph on the left is showing in the light blue box is the threshold, so that's at 54 degrees and below. And then in the dark blue line, we've got the baseline case, so the existing conditions, the teal line being the team's proposed design, and the yellow bar, which is a Phius compliant case. So in this case, on the graph to the right, we can see just how many set hours this project had. So the baseline were around like 675 hours during the outage period, under 54 degrees. In their proposed design, they could get that down to about 400, but that still wasn't compliant with the standard. So we increased the air tightness of the proposed design in order to get the project under that threshold of 216 hours. Similar thing with the single family in Eugene. Baseline case didn't quite meet. Their proposed design was almost there, and we increased air tightness once again to hit that set threshold. And then on the summer thermal resilience side, we are calling for 0 hours of the heat index in danger and 0 deadly days according to this MORA um, paper that was written. Uh, it's quite stringent, so currently we're looking at ways to get around that. So demand cooling is permitted during the summer outage because of the difficulties related to passive cooling. We're making these houses more airtight and giving them better envelopes, which is going to be great at keeping things out, but it's also going to keep internal heat gains in. Um, so in the top kind of graph for the historic single family in Washington, D.C., this is an example of like what the baseline case is doing in terms of the interior conditions during the outage period. And you can see we're getting into the almost beyond the extreme danger zone um, for the heat index. If we plotted the Phius case also on this chart with no active cooling, so active cooling is when is at 77 degrees. That's the set point. And we can see in both of these cases, we can see when the active cooling kind of turns on during the outage period during the week. If we plotted the Phius case with no active cooling, it may be worse than the baseline because we're keeping all of those internal gains in, which is not helping us during the summer. Um, so we're looking at ways to implement night flush cooling into the tool, and other kind of passive cooling strategies that we can take advantage of to help projects meet uh, the thermal resilience criteria without active cooling. And again, core versus zero for the core tier. The backup power for this active cooling may be provided with a gas or fossil fuel generator, but for the zero tier, it has to be all PV and battery storage. So yeah, these are again the charts for the historic single family in Washington, D.C. The top left graph is just the dry bulb temperature, and the heat index graph is a combination of that dry bulb temperature and the relative humidity indoors. And yeah, similar deal for the Oregon case, although we can see that in terms of how much energy they're going to need to do active cooling, it's not going to be nearly as much as the DC case, because you can see there are times throughout the outage period during the week when they don't need to provide any active cooling. And then these are examples of how the adorb cost stacks up. So this is cost per square foot. Um, there are multiple different ways you can compare the adorb cost. So if there's a change in the number of bedrooms, you can go by the cost per bedroom, or the cost per occupant, or the cost per square foot. Because the adorb costs can kind of be tricky to meet in some cases. So we're giving teams the opportunity to use different factors in order to meet it. The historic single family in Washington, D.C. Saw much better adorb cost for both the proposed design and Phius case compared to the baseline. And at the end of the day, this is kind of a summary of the calculator outputs and how to analyze the results. So the Revive Calc outputs will include the site EUI, the set hours, the number of deadly days, the adorb cost, and it will also estimate the size of the battery backup needed to make it through the outage periods. So kind of an important metric here, this heating battery capacity is the same for both cases, and that is because of the required loads that have to be covered for the operational resilience. So this is your 5 CFM per person through your ventilator, and 33 watts for MELs. And then the cooling battery size are those pieces in addition to the energy needed to cool the space to 77 during the summer outage scenario. Um, so we can see in this historic Washington, D.C. case, again, the one metric that they weren't meeting were the set hours. This is because active heating can't be implemented. We had to meet this passively, so we increased the air tightness. Now they're passively meeting their set hour criteria. And as a result of that, the cooling battery goes down. So even though we're keeping more internal gains in, when you cool the space, it's going to require less energy because all of that cool air is going to stay in the envelope. Um, and then for the single family in Eugene, yep, very similar thing again. had to meet the set hours passively by increasing the air tightness. Um, and meeting the rest of the requirements. And you can see these, I mean, these battery sizes are kind of a good indication for us that the summer outage scenario may be a little bit too stringent. 90.7 kilowatt hours for a passive building isn't ideal. And so, yeah, we're looking at ways to kind of back off on that stringency to make it more realistic for projects to meet the criteria and provide battery backup for these outage scenarios. We also have oh, excuse me. Also go through a multifamily example. Um, so we looked at brownstone in New York City, a multifamily project. I believe it was 4 units, 11 bedrooms total, and 8.5 baths. These are some of the interior photos. And so Revive Calc, in addition to single family, also supports multi-zonal modeling, which is new for Phius. Um, and in order to use Revive Calc, this is showing SketchUp, but any geometry editing tool that can output an IDF can be used in conjunction with Revive Calc. And then assemblies get tagged in the geometry so that they can be iterated and optimized for resilience versus decarbonization versus cost. So these are some of the cases that were run, and these column headers indicate categories that are output from the Revive Calc tool. So the baseline case in this example um, wasn't performing well as expected, and then the case down at the bottom was an IECC compliant envelope, fully electrified, um, but much more resilient. So these are the adored cost of the proposed case being that IECC case electrified, and then the base case. So these are the graphs that come directly out of the Revive Calc tool. The other ones that I had showed before are kind of what we've been formatting from the results files that are generated. But this will how it'll look when it comes directly from the calculator. Um, and again, the definitions for all of these pieces are on that initial slide. Direct energy is the energy required to operate the building. Direct maintenance includes replacement costs, first costs for the baseline or for the proposed case, appliance replacement, window replacement, that kind of stuff. Operational carbon, embodied carbon, and the cost of energy transition. So yeah, again, this is the output directly from the calculator. It is in SI units. But we can see that the baseline case, and this is also looking at two different apartments. So this is looking at apartment 2 and apartment 4, which would be like the worst case scenario apartments. Um, and we can see that they are well below the set hours in apartment 4 in the baseline case. Whereas in the upgraded case with an IECC envelope and some better air tightness, there's a lot less fluctuation in both the temperature and relative humidity. And the project does end up meeting the set hours. Um, and then for the baseline, yeah, we can see a lot of um, dramatic things happening on the temperature and relative humidity in the base case. So as the building stands, we can see it's probably not very comfortable to be in during an outage period. And then this graph is a combination of the temperature and relative humidity graphs. It is the heat index graph, so anything over the yellow line is not allowed. So looking at this, if this were for the IECC case, they would need to deploy some active cooling in order to meet the heat index criteria. So in summary, the base case is not efficient or resilient. The life cycle cost was almost identical, but that also came with a 35% reduction in energy, 12% reduced energy cost, and also comes with thermal resilience. So the people that live here are going to be safe and sound even during these extreme weather outage periods. Um, the IACC 2021 envelope with additional air sealing seems to work well, which was also demonstrated in the DC and Oregon projects. But there's still room to optimize further. We don't have to stick to air tightness. There are other knobs we can turn. And yeah, so the future of Revive, as we are as it is a brand new standard, there's still a long way to go. We need projects to test it out, and help us learn where we can improve. And we need people to ask questions and understand, um, how we can be more clear in our guidance going forward. So all of our current Phius Revive 2024 resources can be found on the Phius website, and coming soon will be the Phius Revive 2024 design and implementation workbooks. We'll have calculators and tools come out as time goes on, and we'll continue to make developments and updates to the Revive Calc tool. And with that, I will open it up to questions.
Yeah, thanks, Haley. I think the biggest one that came through just to um, know is where can people go to contact or reach out if they wanted to um, sign a project up for that, I don't know, the pilot or, where's the best place? Is it reaching out to you?
Yeah, so the Phius Submit a Project page is the best place to go to get your project registered.
Hmm.
But we do also offer feasibility studies if you're not sure about it or just want to
Hmm.
um, kind of get a quick and dirty intro to the Revive Calc tool itself. There is quite a learning curve on it, so a lot of teams have found the feasibility study stage at this point quite helpful.
Okay. And so that's for people who are just saying, "Hey, I'll test your tool out and give you feedback." That's the best place for them to go.
Yeah, well, yeah, yep.
Okay. And then the other question that came in was about artificial intelligence. And I think just to the extent that that is utilized in your systems to run analysis and help people make informed decisions. And specifically, they were saying in regards to the climate predictions that you have within your tools, the climate risks.
Yeah, so currently we're not using AI for this tool in any capacity. We are taking TMY3 data, taking the last 30 years of data and then morphing them. And there is protocol in the standard document that describes how we're coming up with these morph factors. But that's one of the components that we're considering backing off because of the stringency of the cooling or the cooling outage period metric right now.
Mhm. And just so I was very surprised to see all these resilience items built in, and that almost seems more like the the leading goal, right? I mean, that seems to be the conversation over necessarily an energy score or rating or reduction. It seems to be more this resistance to the coming heat and cold waves, I believe, also are coming.
Yeah.
And so is that then also carrying out into your new construction standard? Are there these requirements to review these climate risks?
Yeah, so that's kind of like the prime difference between 2024 and or like Revive and the new construction program. So
Hmm.
on the new construction side, the main outcome goals when they were created were comfort, long-term affordability, and durability.
Hmm.
And these other categories were kind of secondary benefits.
Yeah.
So with the Revive 2024 program, we're kind of flipping that script. So we're
Yeah.
more focused on safety and resilience. But the secondary outcomes of that are comfort, long-term affordability, and durability.
Yeah.
So they're all in play here. It's
Yeah.
just we're focused on different things. Yeah.
So if somebody, typically people associate passive house immediately with triple pane windows, R80 attic insulation. So is really the answer like run the models and see if you have a resistant building, not that you necessarily have to put in triple pane windows or pump in R80 into the attic. I mean, is that a correct top level response to that?
Yeah, yep, I would say so. I mean, we're trying, like, it's such a balance of cost and resilience.
Mm.
So, by focusing on resilience first, it's like, what's
Mm.
the bare minimum we have to do to make this project, to make this building safe for
Yeah.
people, during an outage? So,
Yeah.
you still have to meet your, like, comfort and condensation requirements for the new
Sure.
construction standard. But
Mm.
yeah, I think the typical kind of conceptions of what makes a passive building are still there, but
Yeah.
they're not as extreme as the new construction. Yeah.
Sure. Um, and I guess and on that note, the new construction has a prescriptive pathway which kind of gives people, something more tangible that they can understand versus a energy model, which, if you're not an energy modeler, can be a bit out there for people.
Mhm.
Would you say that if you're looking at that prescriptive document, that it would give you still pretty good guidance on retrofits too, or is that completely not a helpful tool, or is there something else out there?
Yeah, I would say the prescriptive checklist and yeah, prescriptive programs that Phius has really do go above and beyond. Like they would
Yeah.
likely probably go beyond the performance standard.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be kind of the most
Mm.
extreme, fail-proof route to take.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you put all of that stuff into a retrofit
Mm.
project, the adobe cost at the end
Mm.
of the day, the cost to implement those features that do go above and beyond might
Mhm.
blow out your baseline.
Sure, sure.
So yeah, it comes back to the balance thing.
Yeah. And I saw embodied carbon popping up in a lot of your slides. Is that part of the formulas in there as well? That so your tool actually can now model embodied carbon as well, or is that a third party tool you're using?
Yeah, so the inputs in the tool have certain there are inputs for
Mm.
some of the pieces. So
Mm.
for all of our assemblies, we're asking teams to come up with the CO2 per unit area. So in our analyses that we've done, we've been
Mm.
using the beam tool
Oh, okay.
to build out our assemblies and get a cost per meter or yeah, carbon per meter squared. Um, Still kind of figuring out how to account for all of that in terms of mechanical systems.
Yeah.
But yeah, it gets all accounted for in the Revive Calc tool and databases that are associated with it.
And is embodied carbon now being integrated into new construction?
Not at this point, no.
Okay. Okay. Um, All right. Well, I know you like you said earlier, you needed to get going here, so I do want to let you go. Just but real quick, I guess, where can people go as a reminder to reach out to you or learn more?
Yeah, you can reach me at hharlow@phius.org. You can also email certification@phius.org or reach out to us through our Contact Us page, which I will drop a link in the chat for.
Mhm.
All right.
All right, great, Haley. Well, I know you need to get going, so I appreciate your time. I got a quick little last minute outro things here for everybody else, but thank you so much for giving us this information. And thanks to Phius for having you out here. So take care and be well. So,
Thanks for having me. Have a
all right.
nice day.
And for the rest of you, just a quick reminder that yes, this session is being recorded, and we will have it listed on our YouTube channel in the next week or so. If you don't want to wait for, or you forget about the listing, you can go there now, click subscribe, and get an instant update when it's available. For those of you watching this in the future, but not right now on demand, take your quiz with an 80% passing rate, and you'll receive your continuing ed. For those of you here live today, check your spam for certs@gutenbergcerts.com to receive your continuing ed certificate. And a huge thanks to our board of directors, our volunteers, our executive director, Jose Reyna, our over 400 members. We're trying to get to 500 by the end of the year, so we hope you can support us and get there. And our sponsors who make products that can help meet and beat the Phius Revive standards, such as Rheem for decarbonization of water heating, Tamarack for ventilation and efficiency strategies, and Build Equinox for smart demand-controlled ventilation systems that reduce energy but also keeps homes healthy and with proper ventilation. So thank you all again. Take care, be well, and we will catch you at the next session next week.
Be sure to check out all of our courses available online that you can watch anytime and anywhere to pick up your CEUs. Before you go, make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube to get weekly updates and stay up to date on green building science courses, webinars, and home tours. Thanks again.